everyone. It's Katie Crysdale here from Lakeview Aquatic Consultants. We are continuing on with these interviews with aquatic professionals who've taken on different trajectories in their career. And I'm really happy today to be joined by Crystal Green-Saffel, who's based in Thailand. So welcome.
Thank you for welcoming me to your show.
Can you talk a little bit about how you ended up in Thailand, what you're currently doing? Because we got connected back when you were working here in Alberta in aquatics, and it sounds like you've had a long journey to get where you are currently.
So I've started in aquatics as a 15-year-old in Saskatchewan, working at outdoor pools in the summers as a way to make some money to pay my way through university was my ultimate goal. Then I ended up partway through my high school deciding that I wanted to stay in recreation and got a degree in leisure and sport management. I then moved to British Columbia and worked in a couple different indoor pools, and then moved to Alberta and worked in a few different pools, with the last one being in Sherwood Park. Pre-COVID, my husband and I came to Thailand on a holiday. Absolutely loved Asia, loved the weather. And then during COVID, my husband had been trying to convince me for several years that we should go traveling and work somewhere other than Canada, because he had been working remote for about 10 to 15 years prior to us leaving Canada. I was like, no, my career, my career. During COVID, I was sick of the cold and went, I want to live somewhere where I do not need to wear socks. So he said, try and figure it out. We discussed where we might want to move. We both enjoyed Bangkok. So we looked in to see if they were allowing English teachers to move to Thailand because it was COVID. One of the first jobs I spotted was an aquatic manager at an out-of-school learning center in Bangkok. And when I came home and said, I saw this job, he's like, you applied for it, right? I thought I should probably discuss it with you before I applied. He's like, definitely apply. So I applied for the job, and after 3 interviews and a few months of back and forth with them, here I am in Thailand 3.5 years later.
You're living my dream. I love Thailand. I've only been there once. I was there in 2006. I loved my time in Asia. And it's been on my list of I need to get back there because the people are wonderful, the food is wonderful, the country, my experience in smaller areas, less touristy areas, it's just a wonderful place to be. It sounds like an absolutely incredible experience.
And it has been. We've been all over Thailand. We discovered after being here for about 6 months, during COVID, you couldn't leave your province, but you could leave your province if you had a vehicle. So we rented a car, which we had no intention of doing when we first moved here. Since renting the car during COVID, we've now purchased a car. If you had your own vehicle, you could travel anywhere in Thailand. We've done road trips because we're Canadian. Canadians do road trips. We don't fly places, we do road trips. So we've driven to Phuket twice from Bangkok, which is the far south of Thailand. About a 12-hour drive from Bangkok. We've driven to Chiang Mai 2 or 3 times. We've been all over Thailand.
It's funny you mentioned about driving because I had sent a meme to a friend. She lives in New York City, and so she hardly drives. And for her, a long bus ride was going out to the Hamptons, so 3 hours. And I sent her this meme that said, why would we fly? It's less than 12 hours drive. That's a very much Western Canada, Alberta meme. If I want to go to Jasper from my house, it's 7 hours. I can't fly there. I'm just going to drive.
Once you're out of Bangkok, driving is easy. We may have never attempted to drive here if it wasn't COVID. Because we started driving in Thailand during COVID, there was almost no traffic. Our biggest challenge was learning to drive on the wrong side of the road.
I would imagine during that period, the country, was it closed to tourists? Was it a little bit quieter when you got to your destination?
It definitely was. I don't think you could come in as a tourist. You may have been able to, depending on the visa type, but you had to get a visa before coming to Thailand. And then you had to do a 2-week mandatory in-hotel quarantine.
So back to the swimming piece, talk us through what does a day at work for you in Bangkok, Thailand look like now as a pool person?
It's very different. We actually have 3 pools, 3 bodies of water. They are all approximately the same size. They're kind of egg-shaped almost. and they're about 10 meters long by 5 meters wide. 2 of our 3 pools are what we call VIP pools. So a VIP pool has 6 VIP changing rooms. Each family gets their own private changing room for their class and their own private shower room. So our maximum class size, our maximum number of students in any one class is 6 students. So we have 2 pools like that and 1 pool that is not the VIP. It doesn't have the private changing rooms around the side. So our VIP pools then, because of the private changing rooms, we can't have swimming lessons back to back like I'm used to in Canada. We have our 30-minute classes, but then 15 minutes before the start of their class time, they are allowed to enter the pool area, go to their change room, get changed, and we have a splash pool they can utilize until their class start time. They have their class time, and then they have a 15-minute window after the class to get changed and head out. So we have to have a 30-minute break between all of our classes to allow the family that was in prior to shower and change, and then the family for the next class to come in, shower, and get changed and ready for their class. At a maximum, we have about 6 classes per day. Some of our classes are 30 minutes, some are 45 minutes. So that is very different from what I'm used to. Our pools are all 1.2 meters deep. Our children range in age from 6 months to about 10 or 11 years old. As you can imagine, that 1.2 meter depth is a little bit scary for some of our 3 and 4-year-olds. So that's a challenge for teaching lessons. I've really had to change how I teach some of those classes because the activities I would do to try and encourage a scared, stiff child to get wet participating and get under the water, I can't do some of those activities because they can't stand up.
There's so much about what you're describing, Crystal, that's really interesting to me because I think to what you've said, municipal pools here, at least in Alberta, a lot are doing back-to-back lessons with very little prep time for the instructor, very little transition time for the families. It's organized chaos on the hour, lessons breaking, the new lessons starting, double the amount of people around. And so what you're describing to me, although maybe not accessible to everyone at a certain price point, is a really interesting model where we're starting to see from COVID in business, lots of families will pay extra or splurge for private space or private experience, or I would imagine just even if you have a larger family or multiple children that you're caring for, to be able to corral them in one room, one changing stall, or to have that dedicated space. You don't have to worry about locks and lockers, just get going. There's certain value to some parents and families in that.
Definitely there is. We cater to high-income clientele. We see lots of Porsches in our parking lot. That our clientele often doesn't even bat an eye at our prices. But just for comparison's sake, a 45-minute private lesson here, one lesson costs about $100 Canadian equivalent.
Can you speak a little bit to Thai culture and swimming? I'm curious, is it a common activity? Is it only certain types of people do swimming? What does that look like in Thailand?
It's definitely not a common activity. And Thailand has one of the highest reported drowning rates in the world. It is the leading cause of death in children under the age of 12. Every international school has a pool and teaches swimming, but most Thai schools don't have pools and don't teach the children how to swim. It's definitely wealthy person's activity in Thailand.
And for context, some people who may not be familiar so much with the geography of Thailand, Bangkok is the capital. It's a very dense urban area.
Bangkok does somewhat border the Gulf of Thailand, but it's very muddy. So no, it's not beach. It does have the river. And it has lots and lots of canals. Actually, the owner of our facility, her mom came to some aqua fitness classes that I offered. And she was telling me that when she first learned how to swim, she learned how to swim in the river. Nowadays, I would never encourage anyone to go in that river. It's not a clean river. Back when she was a child, it may have been much cleaner than it is now. But that's where she learned how to swim. And one of my staff said that his dad learned how to swim in a canal.
That fits the reading I've done, not extensively, but just a little bit about some Asian countries like Bangladesh, Vietnam, Thailand, Laos, where, there's bodies of water, whether it is the ocean, a river, a canal, a rice paddy. There may be ferries to different outlying islands. People, they're not necessarily swimming. It may be associated with agricultural activities, transportation, even cattle. And so if somebody is learning how to swim, it may be where they grew up. It's not getting in a pool like we might think of in North America. Spending a day at the pool is not a leisure activity people all have access to.
Exactly. And public pools are not common here. Pretty much every condo, every gated community has a pool. People who live in condos and gated communities, again, are a little bit wealthier, and they will sometimes use their pools, but often you don't see that many Thai people in the pools. It's more often the expats, because Thai people don't want the sun to hit their skin. When you do see a Thai person in a pool, they're wearing long sleeve shirts and long pants. And the reason for that is they get a tan if the sun hits their skin. They don't want to be perceived as being poor having to do work outside.
We have a friend who is Mexican, and it's very similar insofar as I've seen him working outside, and I would be absolutely overheating with the long sleeves, the long pants, the hats, the neck coverage. But to your point, it's those associations. He has a white collar job. He does not want to get any darker than he already is in his culture. So you talked a little bit about swimming lessons. What other types of services do you offer at your facility?
We offer parented lessons for the 6-month to 3-year age group, and then the unparented lessons for 3 years plus. We have offered adult lessons and adult aquafit. We've offered pregnancy aquafit. We have the 3 pools, but technically we have a 4th body of water that we call a baby spa. It's quite shallow, and we keep it a little bit warmer, and we teach baby classes in there. So from about 3 months up to a year, we do baby's water touch. So getting the parents familiar and the baby familiar in the water and doing a lot of sensory activities with that parent-child bond. And we also do what we call a baby spa class, where they do an introduction to water play, and then the teacher instructs the parent how to massage their baby. Those programs for the babies are UK-based programs. Our sister school is a UK-based curriculum, so we do bring a lot of information from the UK. The swim program they partnered with prior to me starting is a US-based program. So that was already in place when I started. I've introduced, I guess you would say, more Canadian philosophy in having guidelines, distances on the swims, and to what standard. Is there a difference in what the freestyle looks like at level 1, 2, and 3? So I've introduced those criteria into our program, because in Thailand, we don't have any governing body or provider to offer us program standards, so we can develop and modify our curriculum as we see fit.
It's so interesting what you mentioned about the babies, because baby programs are so unregulated and so widespread in their purpose and intent. You've got everything from the very controversial infant self-rescue lessons, which people may have seen throwing the baby in the pool so it does a rollover float, to, water babies out of the UK or different US programs. I have a client that has done their own baby curriculum, where it's interesting to see there really is no consensus, whether it's, like you said, introducing water movement, introducing sensory experiences that are positive, whether you believe you can train a baby to roll over, float to survive. It's so different by country and region and educational philosophy. It's wild. Are your staff locals? Are they expats? What kind of staff makeup do you have in terms of age or nationality?
All of our staff are adults. Most of them are late to mid. We have Thai, Filipino, Canadian, UK. We've also had people from France and Turkey. We had somebody from Africa recently. Our school is like what we're used to as a rec center in Canada. So we have our swimming program, but we also have gym. So gymnastics for little ones and out of school learning. We've got recipe classes and play community and math classes, but I've stuck primarily in aquatics. I have been trying to offer a T-ball class to introduce baseball to the children that we work with, because baseball is not a common sport in Thailand.
That's interesting. I wouldn't have thought that, but each country has such a different history and profile.
Thailand has never been settled by other countries, so they have their own unique customs and culture here. Like in Vietnam, you tend to have a lot of the French colonialism influence, whereas Thailand doesn't have those influences.
So we've talked about the programs that you're running. We've talked a little bit about the staff. I know you were very comfortable with pool operations in your previous role here in Canada. Are you involved in that in Bangkok, or does someone else take care of that completely?
So when I started here, I was told not to worry about it. Just make sure that everything was running. If there was any problems, just tell our office manager. And she would call in our pool company. The school was still very new. They were open for less than a year when I arrived, and they were technically closed for part of that first year because of COVID. As problems arose in the last 3.5 years, and people would call our pool maintenance company in to problem solve, and they would tell me something and I would know that it wasn't necessarily correct. All of our equipment is from the US. We have sand filters with a multi-port and UV on our systems, salt cells. Working in Alberta, I had worked with a saltwater pool, so I'm familiar with how they worked. What they're telling me isn't making sense. I was familiar with the names of the products, even though I wasn't familiar with those specific products. I just went online, found the manuals, read the manuals, and figured it out on my own. So now, because I've just taken care of things, they're so used to me taking care of things. Along those lines, one of the things that I've found is our pool company doesn't understand to the extent that I'm familiar with pool operations. We had an issue. I felt that it was an alkalinity issue. I asked for an alkalinity test kit. Our pool suppliers don't know what alkalinity is. They didn't have alkalinity test kits to sell, so we've had to source them elsewhere. We had an issue where all of a sudden our system created way too much chlorine overnight, and we came into a chlorine of probably 15. And my coworker, she's from the UK, she's not as familiar with pool operations. I was on my days off, she was working, and she said, this should not happen. Let's call the pool company and fix it so it doesn't happen again. And their solution was to add fresh water. And when she asked them if they wanted to drain the pool, they said, no, we don't need to drain it. We'll just add more water and it'll overflow. So these kinds of things, they didn't know how to do a dilution test to see exactly how high the chlorine was. I taught them how to do that. And when I suggested that we needed probes, I felt our probes might be at their lifespan because they've been in place for 4.5 years. They didn't replace the probes, they replaced the salt cell.
It's so frustrating to hear. Everything you're describing is a mixture of casual misogyny we sometimes see in aquatics as operators, as facility staff who are very knowledgeable, and then you couple it with a country where there may not be the same regulatory standards or even the access to the same training standards. I have had people reach out over the years regarding the certified pool operator course, and they are in countries where there is no training standard and they wish to achieve a training standard to try and distinguish their company, distinguish themselves to do better. But then they're up against suppliers locally or competitors who it's not the same market, where the competitor will just say, oh, well, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He took a course from a lady in Canada. And even though the information is factual, accurate, vetted from a textbook that's fact checked, it never goes anywhere. And it ends up being very frustrating because if people don't believe you, that's half the problem. And if you don't have access to the products, thankfully your boss at least respects your knowledge and experience, that they don't undo your work at this stage.
They don't, but convincing them to replace something, saving money where it can be saved, seems to be most important above all else. And that's really challenging in aquatics. In Canada, I would do operations training with all the staff when they were first hired, because they would have to do water tests. And what we found is if they understood why they were doing the water tests, they took it more seriously and did a better job. So I've taken some of those presentations and I've adapted them for our specific pool here. I haven't presented them a couple times to staff, but recently I've had staff with me now for over 2 years who are saying, I would really like to learn more about pool operations. And then I've got some staff right now who speak very good Thai and English. One of the girls is a Thai citizen married to a Canadian. She has very good English skills, so she's going to help me translate the presentation into Thai. So hopefully we can educate our Thai maintenance staff who help us.
And in a perfect world, I honestly think it's best for every pool to do what you're doing, Crystal, like to have their own internal training. But so many places I encounter more in the hospitality side or the property management, they don't have that legacy internally. Somebody quits, they take all the information with them. HR doesn't get a new body in that spot for 4, 8, 12 weeks. And then they're might-eyed, bushy-tailed, they don't know what to do. And so a standard pool operator course is a step in the right direction. But I learned the same as you on the job at the University of Toronto through mentorship. We had very little documentation, which in hindsight is a bit of a problem for learners who need to refer back to things. But I couldn't even tell you hundreds of hours of following the shift supervisor. You learn so much that way, but not every organization prioritizes that the way it sounds like you're able to.
Oh, exactly. I don't know how often my husband says to me, how do you know that? Whether it's plumbing in our house or whatever. I learned that working at pools, because especially the last organization I worked at, we had a policy where a contractor was not allowed in our building unsupervised by a staff member. So I would be their little puppy dog following them around, whatever they were doing. And most of them would explain to me what they were doing. Some of them would even say, I'm going to show you how to do this so that next time you don't have to call us. They knew that I would call them if it was something I couldn't do. But simple things, we then didn't have to call them anymore because they taught me how to do it.
Well, and I think that trusting relationship with service providers is so important, and what really separates the wheat from the chaff. When I'm working with different companies, my experience is exactly what you're describing, Crystal. You know, we would hire someone to come in and install a backflow preventer or rewire a pump. And in my municipal experience, they were not disrespectful to me if I was hanging around or asking questions. But then when I look at the private service side, like pool service providers in Canada, in the US, who go to residential pools, or who I would say work at smaller commercial sites like a hotel or a smaller property, they take the perspective, oh, it's almost protectionist. I can't show what I'm doing because then they won't call me back. And I just don't like that there's not that goodwill within the industry, that we're all trying to do the same thing here. We want water that doesn't make people sick, doesn't get people hurt. they've lost the plot, I think.
Exactly. And I find one of the challenges here is all of our service providers only speak Thai. I don't speak Thai yet. I'm at the point where I understand a little bit. I can say the odd thing. When they come in, I can show them this one and say it in Thai, but I can't have that explanation as to what the problem is in Thai. So I'm explaining the problem to someone who speaks Thai, but doesn't understand pools, to then translate that into a language I don't understand to communicate it to a company who may not fully understand the systems they were asked to install. I'm also used to working in municipal pools where we had service contracts. If my pump went down and I called them at 9 o'clock at night, they would be there by 9:45 and we would have that repaired by 11 o'clock before we would leave the building, and it would run all night because our systems ran 24 hours a day. Here, our pump goes down. It's 5 days or a week before our service company comes out to even see what the problem is. And I don't know if it's a communication issue to them, but I know what a broken impeller sounds like. I've worked in aquatics for 30 years. I know what the problem is, but they come out, tear the pump apart, go, oh, it's a broken impeller. Yeah, I told you that a week ago. Why didn't you bring the impeller with you? And then not only do they have to come out and see what the problem is, but now they have to go back to their shop and order the impeller. They don't even have a spare on site. Whereas I'm used to having these service contracts where our service company had to have one of the parts for each of our pumps on site.
I think it's a mix of service contracts, a mix of location, and the mix of personalities of certain companies. Because I have a client in Ontario who is very frustrated all the time. She will send me a text or a photo and ask me a question. I'll give my opinion. And I'm usually the bad guy, like we lovingly say, you know, what does Katie say? Because it's usually polar opposite to what her service company says. But this person is in a bind because they're in a very high deliverable situation where they have 3 facilities. Every hour that they're closed is lost revenue. And she's a woman owner. So what do you do when your service company, who does answer your call, does show up, may disbelieve your advice, may disrespect you as a female owner, but at least you're showing up, and then you're getting overcharged? She's in a tough spot because on the one hand, she gets some service. On the other hand, she doesn't want to burn the relationship because I'm not sure she's going to get any better service from a bigger provider who considers her facilities too small and unimportant. So that's kind of that casual misogyny I was saying, where I don't think we need to stand on the rooftops and make a big point about it, but it happens all the time in all different locations to very qualified, experienced operators. And all I can say kind of that I've come to the conclusion is that in aquatics, those of us who've worked in programs, in guarding, we have this willingness to learn that I don't think exists in the mainstream population. Because like you said, Crystal, you're watching, you're reading, you know, you went online, you downloaded the OEM manuals, you figured it out. I don't see that as much outside of that kind of program part of aquatics.
That's true. It's a very, very unique niche group of people that are willing to do that.
Do you have lifeguards, lifeguard training? What does that look like either at your facility or in your experience, what you've heard from other pools in Thailand?
So we don't have lifeguards. There is one company in Bangkok that offers lifeguard training, but I would never certify any of our staff with said training because it is an 8-hour program. And being a lifeguard instructor trainer in Canada, I know that a good lifeguard training course should take you at least 40 hours. There's no way you can teach somebody how to be a good lifeguard in 8 hours, in my opinion. There are Life Saving Society programs in Thailand for beach certification and oceanfront lifeguard certification. And we do see lifeguards on some of the beaches. Not all beaches have them, but especially the busier touristy beaches such as Phuket, we've seen lifeguards out with the proper flags up.
One of the other questions I had circling back to the programming you mentioned at the beginning, are most of your lessons during the day or after school, evenings and weekends? Like you said, you have very wealthy families at your facility, but is the family lifestyle look similar to Canada where kids go to school, then have after school activities and then maybe family activities on the weekend?
So when I started here, the staff started at 9 a.m. and ended at 6 p.m. with a 1 hour unpaid lunch. So 8-hour days. I suggested trying an earlier class on Saturdays. It was the only way I could see where we could potentially add extra classes on Saturdays. So we tried it only on Saturdays, not on Sundays. And our 8:30 a.m. class has been full every time we've offered it. So now we've expanded that earlier class to Sundays as well. During the week isn't as popular for an early class. The only one that has been a little bit popular is to offer a class right after school drop off for the parents. So we've been doing that one. And then during the day, what we find Monday to Friday mornings is generally our parented classes. Early afternoon, 1 o'clock, we sometimes have a parented class or a 3-year-old unparented, early unparented classes for children who have a delayed start to school. Here, lots of children start school under 3 years old, where they're going Monday to Friday. Our school offers what they call a crash program, or an 18 to 24 month start, and they go 5 days a week. So then our after school programs are the out of school learning, with weekends being an assortment of children who are in school during the week, children who go to other schools and can't make it to our school after school, parents who work during the week and want to bring their child to the parented classes. And right now we're actually short staffed. We've recently lost 2 staff members. So we're recruiting, but we're at the limit of what we have on weekends. We've got staff working to their maximum, and our wait list for Saturday and Sunday is over 20 children, which is huge considering we only have 200 children registered right now.
I was going to say that wait list is huge to you, but for every other programmer who might be listening, with 1,100 people on the wait list at some BC pools, different problems for different people, right?
Exactly. And I recognize that our numbers are low in comparison, but we're still growing our programs because our facility opened 4.5 years ago during COVID. After I started here, we had to close down for a while because of COVID restrictions, and then we were allowed to teach private lessons only. It's been a slow build. We're currently at 200 registrations, but honestly, that's only limited because of staffing restrictions, because we've lost 2 staff in the last month.
What you're describing, Crystal, makes a lot of sense. I would imagine it's a bit like starting a boutique fitness facility. You really have to grow your clientele in an area. And if you're in a city like Bangkok, Thailand, where certain people will move to Bangkok maybe as expats, or they'll be wealthy and they know they want their kids to learn how to swim. But you do have to market those families when they have so many other options in terms of activities that their kids could be doing. It's not going to be that you open the doors and they flock to your community.
Exactly. And I find our registration process so different than what I'm used to. I'm used to, you set your day and your time that your registration is going to open. And if you're not on the phone, on the computer, 5 minutes before registration opens, you're not getting those prime spots. Well, at our facility, we have a sales team, and they open registration to our current students before anyone else. Our private students get first dibs on their private spots. Once they contact all the private students, then they open it up to our current registration and see if they want their spot. And then a week later, it opens up for any new registration. It's very different than, they're telling us that for our January classes, they want to start selling them by the end of October. Except we won't be doing our assessment on those children until mid-October, because of the way we do our sales, they want us to try to offer the same children the same time slots so they can stay swimming at the same time in the next term with the same swimming teacher. So we haven't done our assessment yet when we need to build our schedule. How can we create a schedule that's going to work for all of these families when we don't know yet if they're going to move up to the next level or stay in that level? Because we've only started teaching them at the end of August. So, and they did this to us for fall term as well. We ran a 6-week summer term and they sold the fall term before our summer term even started.
I wanted to talk a little bit to Crystal about like, how is living in Bangkok? Do you love it? How has it been? Because I know a lot of people who are watching this are in your position where they've been at the same organization for a long time. They know what to expect. And it can be really scary to say, yeah, I'm going to resign my position that's good for life with good benefits, good pension. I'm going to move to the other side of the world and not know what to expect.
It's very different. I can definitely say that. The one thing with working in Thailand, it is possible to find a job here without a university degree, but it's so much more difficult. As long as you have that university degree, it doesn't matter what it's in. For some reason, the Thai government loves it. They accept you almost without question into the role and give you a long-term visa with no problem. In Thailand, the thing that I find is it's hot and humid. I am probably 98% of the time wearing shorts. You do have to wear long pants if you're going to visit a temple or if you're going to immigration. They consider showing your knees disrespectful. So anything official, you have to have long pants on and proper closed-toed shoes. It's interesting because cost of living is so different than Canada. Off the top of my head, I don't know what my rent would convert to, but I would say less than $800 Canadian, and we're in a 2-bedroom condo with a rooftop pool and a fitness center. Cooking at home is something very different that you have to get used to. We don't have a stove like what we're used to, where you have 4 burners and oven to bake things. Here, well-suited kitchen has a 2-burner stove and a microwave. So we've had to buy a countertop oven so that we can cook at home because we just can't survive with just a 2-burner cooktop. Eating out can be inexpensive, but it can be expensive. It really depends what kind of food you eat. Street food, very cheap. We have some go-to small restaurants where we can get a meal for 50 baht, which at today's exchange rate, I was looking at it earlier today, 100 baht is $4 Canadian. So 50 baht, $2, and that's your meal for one person. But if you want to eat Western food, sushi, Japanese food, Korean food, you're paying Western prices. So yes, you can survive on a lower income, but what I've found is I can't live on just Thai food. I need my Western comfort food living here on an ongoing basis. So that plays into the salary range that you need. Some expats can survive on 30 to 40,000 baht a month, but it would be tight. I'm here with my husband who's on a spouse visa. We need a bigger condo. We buy more food. It's all relative. We happen to go to Hua Hin this weekend. It's a 2-hour drive from where we live in Bangkok to get to Hua Hin. Our hotel room, 2 nights is costing us $60 Canadian. So about $30 Canadian a night. And it's got everything we need, a comfortable bed, it's clean, a shower. So there's those payoffs.
I would say international living it's not for everyone, and certainly everybody has different shades. Like you said, Crystal, where some people They really have comfort foods that they enjoy. I know I was no different. I spent 2 years living overseas in Israel, spent probably 4 months total living in Asia on different semesters abroad and travel. And you're right, pad thai for $1 is great for the first 6, 7 nights. And then maybe by night 10, you want a cheeseburger. Wherever you get that, you're going to pay a premium for that. And it's a balance. But I do think some people don't recognize that, unless you're quote really hardcore about it, you probably are going to have certain things from home, whether it's sliced white bread or certain types of packaged goods like Kraft Dinner or things that are imported. You're going to end up at the foreigner grocery store at some point paying for something that makes you nostalgic for home.
Exactly. I find dairy here very expensive, but I can't live without my lattes and cheese, so I just pay the price.
I know it's late for you. A couple of last quick questions I had. So you're enjoying being in Bangkok. You see yourself there for a little while longer doing what you're doing?
I'm currently planning on being here until December 2025, leaving then at the earliest. Beyond that, we haven't decided if we're staying in Bangkok, going back to Canada, moving to Malaysia, Vietnam, who knows? We'll have to play it by ear and see where the wind takes us.
I mean, there's so many options now. I'm amazed your spouse was able to remote work long before the rest of us did. That's such a treasure to be able to have that flexibility. And then your skills are transportable. It's just figuring out what that looks like in terms of credentials or roles. I think that's really exciting.
It's been an amazing experience. Part of the reason why we chose to do it was, unfortunately, we've had a few friends, colleagues, etc., plan to do lots of travel after they retired, but their health is so poor that they're not able to do the traveling that they want to do. And we didn't want that to happen to us. So when the opportunity arose, if we move to Thailand, even though I am working full time, we will be able to see most of Asia over the course of a few years.
I think that's so important what you brought up. Nobody talks enough about how their quality of life to be able to travel in their 50s, 60s, and 70s is maybe not realistic. And I know I'm seeing this. My mom is in her late 70s. A lot of my friends are starting to contend with their parents also in their 70s. A friend just took a trip with her dad and was really struggling with a trip that they could have done 3 years ago, no problem. And all of a sudden looking down the barrel and saying, we may not be able to do a transatlantic flight anymore. He may not have the stamina to do walking every day. And I really strongly feel what you've said. A lot of people don't factor that in. Yes, it's a risk to put your life on hold. Maybe ask your employer if you can take a sabbatical, 4 months unpaid leave, but don't wait until it's too late.
Exactly. And was part of what drove us to make this decision to go and live overseas, even though we can't travel quite as much as we could if we had unlimited financial support. At least we are able to do some of what we're wanting to do.
And I think there is something really to be said for staying in one place, learning about it and enjoying it. 2 trips I had this year that were very, very short, 5 days in Wales and 5 days in Bern, Switzerland. People had said you can take the train all over Switzerland, you can do all these things. And I said, no, I just want to be in Bern for 5 days. I want to experience going to the grocery store, talking to people, sitting in a cafe. There's this Instagram culture sometime of how many things can I hit in 5 days? And then you leave with no experience of the people or the culture. And I was very satisfied in both situations where I felt like I really saw Bern. I really saw Chester, England, which is not Wales, but it's close to Wales where I was doing some work. And so I'm with you. It would be, great to maybe hit a different country every few months, but I would imagine you have a deeper understanding of Thai culture and history, and you had better relationships than the casual tourist.
Definitely. And so many of the families that I deal with, they are wealthier families. They travel lots, but they've made the comment that I've seen more of Thailand than they have. And my husband even more. As of right now, he's only not being in 8 provinces in Thailand of the 77. So it's definitely is eye-opening to see the differences between the city of Bangkok and the rural area. Like, I've got a friend who came to Thailand on holiday 2 weeks after I was here in 2019. We were in Bangkok staying in a local neighborhood, loved it. She was here on a group tour and only went to Phuket and absolutely hated it and said, I will never go back to Thailand. So it's really dependent on what part of the country you go to, what you're going to experience.
For my trip to Thailand, I spent 5 days in Bangkok, 5 days in Chiang Mai, and 5 days not in Phuket, I think in Pattaya. I hated it, would not go there again. Chiang Mai was beautiful. But if you don't do that research, I'm sure there's many places your husband has been that don't rate well on TripAdvisor, but they were beautiful and a much better experience.
Completely. Thailand is known for its party scene. So if you're coming here as a 20-something, your goal is to experience the party scene, you have to go to a different part of Thailand than if you're in your 40s and you want the cultural experiences and see the temples, meet the people, and experience the food and the culture. It really plays into where you want to go in Thailand. And unfortunately, what I see in a lot of the travel-related Facebook groups is people will say, I'm going to Thailand, where should I go? What should I see? And in my opinion, you can't get advice about Thailand without providing what kind of experience you're looking for.
Well, and I think you hit the nail on the head there as a traveler. It's so subjective. Like, what I want to do when I'm in Thailand might be different from someone else.
That's exactly it. Like, even Bangkok is such a big city, 15 million people, or I don't remember the exact population of Bangkok. There's a major river that runs through the middle of Bangkok. And generally, the majority of the population, and what I consider downtown Bangkok, is east of the river. All the expats tend to be east of the river. Well, my work is west of the river. So we chose to live close to work.
One quick question we should cover. You're hiring. If people are looking for jobs like this, what are the credentials? You don't have to name your employer, but just when people are looking for jobs that might be overseas in aquatics.
The big thing that we look for when we're hiring international staff, because it is quite an expense for the person and for us, we do a multi-phase Zoom interview. We want somebody who has experience teaching all ages. So our classes range from babies all the way up to 10, 11 years old. So we're looking for somebody with all that experience rather than bringing somebody in that we have to train. We're not particular about which credential you have, as long as you have a credential. Because we come from all different parts of the world, everybody has different credentials, and then we do in-house training so that you're familiar with what we teach.
Well, and I would encourage anybody who's made it to the end of this chat to really think your skills are portable. Teaching swimming lessons can be in Canada, can be in Thailand, in the Cayman Islands.
In my experience, in my research, it seems like most places around the world teach swimming very similarly. They might change and introduce whip, kick, and breaststroke earlier than we're used to in Canada, but the techniques are generally the same.
Any final thoughts, Crystal, as we're wrapping up this conversation? Anything else you want people to know?
If anyone is interested in learning more about our travels in Thailand, my husband is an amateur photographer and he maintains our Facebook page that is tryppe.com on Facebook. We pronounce it trip.com, and you're welcome to have a look and like things or follow us if you're interested in learning more about what we're up to here.
I want to second the Facebook page because as somebody who is more of an off the beaten path traveler at this point, I got a lot of really interesting ideas of different regions of Thailand. The photos are spectacular and it feels more like, I'm dating myself, old school photos of Thailand from National Geographic than the stuff we're seeing on Instagram that could be interchangeable with any other country.
Exactly. I really like his photos, and I thought I was an amateur photographer until I started looking at my husband's photos, and I'm like, I'll let you do it. And what we've noticed is now that we've been here 3.5 years, we were like, oh, we've been to this same temple 5 times. Should we post about it again? But often we will. And the people who've seen us post about it before can just scroll. But we get new followers all the time. So we think it's important to say, hey, we're back at our favorite temple. Or the algorithm didn't show them for 5 years ago, because those algorithms don't show everybody everything.
I want to say a big thank you to Crystal Saffel for joining us from Bangkok, Thailand to talk about her aquatic experience. So thank you so much for being here.
Not a problem. It was a great opportunity.